talk about the new album. We're going to talk about Bill Evans. So thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet. So let's begin our journey before we get into the album. I want to kind of talk about something that changed the trajectory of all of us, especially musicians, which was surviving this pandemic 6 years ago. It kind of set things in motion. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach music and life today?
Okay. Well, I had just moved to London from the northeast of England. So I used to be based near Newcastle in the northeast of England. I just moved to London at the start of March 2020, and our national lockdown started about 2 weeks after I'd moved down. So it was quite a shock to the system for that reason. Just literally just arrived, and I had some work lined up, and loads of gigs were cancelled. And so, as with most musicians, everything was kind of thrown upside down. But it was already thrown upside down because I was in a totally different town. In overall, I mean, personally, I thank goodness nobody close to me suffered particularly from it. I didn't have any family members who suffered with COVID or anything in that way that I know. Some people had terrible experiences, and I managed to take the time to. I wrote loads of music, composed loads of music, did loads of practice. I wrote some blogs about jazz, about all sorts of things. I had so much time. I was doing all sorts of random things in a way to keep me busy. So it was in some ways quite productive for me. And then very strange as things started opening up again. Again, I think everyone had this experience. It was odd coming back into the the new normal, as it was called at the time. And the other thing I did, just one more thing, was that I did loads of live streams. I did one a week, just from here, from this room.
Yeah.
Just playing on my keyboard, and I had family and friends watching it. I think it was a good way for them to check I was still here and still making music. So yeah, that's kind of our, and we were allowed to exercise as well. We were allowed to go out for walks once a day. That was one of the rules over here. So always going out for a good walk every day or a run when no one was around. So that's how I survived most of it.
Good deal. How
Yeah.
about you?
So for me, COVID hit just I was releasing my first album that was a collaboration with a bass player. It was a voice and bass album, and we had our release date was June 2020. So by the time we got to it, all our plans for a release tour and everything was shut down. And so we were really bummed about that, but I don't know if that actually made it more appealing digitally, because we've seen like there was a lot of interest in music and things, and so from that respect, we did see we got some good feedback on that from people all over the world that we weren't expecting to. He's Japanese, and I met him in SF, and he was on a student visa, and his plan was to go and make it in the big city of New York. And he ended up, because everything was shut down, he basically wasted his student visa, in COVID, in like lockdown, and not being able to do anything, and just having to go back to Japan after that. So for him, it was very impactful. For me, just same as everybody else, I guess. From then on, after being busy, like trying to push this thing on the computer, and then I did my share of live streams as well. But San Francisco opened, I think, rather late. Like it took us a lot of time to feel safe again. And a lot of famous clubs just didn't make it. So the city was quite different after that. It took us I think only in the past 2 years, it feels like we're back, like people are going out. The scene there's like a new club that's open, and yeah. So yeah, at the same time, I was also trying to get pregnant, so I was busy doing that. Yeah, so COVID was interesting for me. But yeah, I think some people have had a worse experience than us.
Yeah, yeah, there's been kind of a wide spectrum of things. But let me ask you this. How did you two convene on this project? How did you come together and start creating? And then we'll kind of peel back the layers of Bill Evans.
Yeah. Um, well, I was invited to take part in. I have a good friend that lives in London, and he invited me to participate. He was throwing a big gala, sort of a gala event for a very rich person, and invited me to be the was sort of like the reception and post party band. So the main there was like a party band, a party of like thing that he was writing arrangements for and everything, and for me to be the to organize the to lead the reception and the after party, which was meant to be more like jazz and something like that. And I said, great. I mean, I lived in London and I've always wanted. I've been trying to go back there ever since. So this was a great opportunity to come, and then through him, he introduced me to a guitar player who is predominantly a jazz guitar player, and then he kind of put the band together, which included the great Paul Edis. And so this is basically how we met, just doing this random gig, which in a very fancy hotel, and there was like a production team, like something absurd. And yeah, here we are. There's just a bunch of jazzers, trying to find our place. And yeah, that's basically how this project came to be. Um,
It was quite handy actually because we had a long wait. We did have the sound check, and then there's a big bit of time to kill, which sometimes happens with gigs. You have to wait around for, and that we sort of just sat there, and I just started chatting to Noah, and somehow Bill Evans came up, and then that was it. It's one of those. I'm glad we chatted, because who knows, we wouldn't be here if we hadn't talked about Bill Evans.
So, how did you land on Bill Evans? How did this become the focal point? I mean, he is probably arguably one of the most enigmatic, interesting characters to ever exist in the entire idiom. Like, there's so many stories about him. There's so much mystery almost about his music. It's that weird blend of being straight ahead yet totally ethereal and mysterious. How did you land on this? How did it get to fruition?
uh,
Well, so on the back of the conversation where we both realised that we were both really keen on Bill Evans, we loved his music, and I mean, keen doesn't really, very passionate, love his playing, love his music. Um, an idea sort of start to develop. I mean, before that, years ago, I partly because I love the music and partly because people have often said I sound like Bill Evans sometimes when I'm playing. I had done a couple of piano trio things here and there, and I'd read books about him, so I was already pretty obsessed, and I know Noah was as well in her own way. But this particular idea, I think, came from the angle of um, vocals and Bill Evans, lyrics, because obviously Bill Evans is a piano player, most commonly associated with the piano trio. So there's something quite interesting there, and he did work with vocalists, but mainly known as an instrumentalist. So yeah.
Yeah, I think when we were chatting, I think I was asking just, Paul, who are your influences? And, he had mentioned Bill Evans, and I was like, oh my God, so same. Um, and I had said like, hey, did you know like there are actually quite a few of his compositions that people wrote lyrics for? And he was like, oh, that's interesting. And then, Paul has had a long time collaboration with a great singer named Joe Harrop, for which he had written some lyrics for. And so we kind of started chatting about writing lyrics to tunes and what's that process like. And I said, I dabbled a little bit in writing some lyrics to Monk and Wayne Shorter, and yeah, so sort of that's how this been like. It's like, we both left that concert saying, well, that was interesting. And I think the next summer, well, actually, the next day we actually, with that guitarist, we went into the studio and recorded a bunch of tracks just because he works at a studio and it was accessible. And so kind of the playing relationship kind of deepened. And I ended up coming back to London the following year for performing that material that we recorded. And at the same time, Paul had had some opportunities for us to kind of experiment with this idea of putting together a vocal Bill Evans tribute. And so kind of that simmered because the response that we got from that, from putting this stuff in front of audiences, was great. So yes, so that's basically what's led us to say, hey, let's maybe go into the studio and try to make this thing a full-on album.
How do you land on the songs based on the breadth of his work and his volumes of work? How did you land on the tunes?
That's a very good question, actually. I'm just trying to think how we did end up on on this one. I know there was a lot
Well,
of
we
research.
yeah, well, but the first thing was like we were only going to do Bill Evans's composition, so not stuff that he's famously played,
Yeah.
which a lot of people, in past tributes that I've seen, that they take his like very famous tunes that he made his own, but we were really focusing on his own composition, so that kind of narrowed down a little bit. Um,
Yeah, and trying to play some of the lesser known tunes as well, because um, I think even amongst jazz musicians with his tunes, say you're on a jam session and you call Waltz for Debbie, you might get away with it. Laurie, maybe. There's certain tunes that people will know, but then when you get a bit deeper, they sort of they don't know them. Even the jazz musicians, and he's like Noah says, he's sort of more famous for playing like My Romance and tunes he didn't write, even though he wrote all these tunes and he did record a lot of them as well. So it was kind of finding some of the other ones, which there's tons. I mean, there's so many interesting tunes from a emotional perspective, the way the tunes feel when you play them, but also intellectually. The like he wrote serialist pieces and things like that. He sort of really did interesting things as a jazz performer composer, Bill Evans.
right. Yeah. And then there's also the element of lyrics. So, if there is a set of lyrics that I really liked, that I would go for, okay, this is a great choice because, I really relate to or if there's something that a tune that we both really liked, but it actually didn't have lyrics, this is an opportunity for us to add on another thing of ourselves. Um, and then there's always the balance of wanting to feature, not just ballads. um, and also in the arrangements, trying to, even with Waltz for Debbie, for example, like everybody thinks of it as in three, but he actually performed it, most of the time going into four. So yeah, there's all these different elements of like you're trying to create like a full album that will showcase his different abilities, different periods in his life, in his career, and then the lyrics, the story that they tell.
So this is kind of a hybrid question here. What interesting things or revelations did you have about working together as musicians on this, your collaborative effort on it? And what did you realize about Bill Evans that maybe you didn't realize before you really dug into his catalog and actually etched it down into forever?
One thing I would go for on the second part of that question, just because this jumped to mind first, it's almost like the more you play this music, the more you realize there is to get into it. So on the you can play it in a surface level way and get through it, and it's good, it's fine. You feel like you've done a decent job. But the more you play it, you realize how deep it can go, and how complicated it is. If you see what I mean, because it's kind of, his music is very logical, as well as very emotional and intellectual and all that at the same time. But it can you can really go places with it, and yeah, you'd imagine there might be a point where you think, oh, I'm sick of playing these tunes, but it's completely the opposite. I feel like every time I'm finding more and more, with these compositions. So that's something about the second part of the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, um I think for me, um it's interesting. I've been starting to feel like I'm getting to know him. It's very strange and maybe pretentious, but there's, you know, you start to notice little of his like sort of motivic ideas that you, and like, oh, I think this was just his taste. This was like what he liked. This is sort of like the, you know, um your taste kind of tell, like what you like, the kind of music you like kind of tells you about who you are sometimes. So I feel like it's like, and then I've obviously watched a ton of documentaries and interviews with him, and he's actually done quite, he's one of the documented musicians. So you can get a feel of what he was like as a person. Um, and then, so that's for the second part. I feel like you kind of like I have some sort of an idea or like a feeling of friendship, I guess. Um, and then for the revelation that I had about Paul, well, um, it's not often to meet like a well balanced jazz musician, that is like like a lovely person, um, that you just can rely on, and can sort of like, you start off as a colleague, but you end up feeling like a friend, and that it kind of, the relationship grows beyond the working together part, which is very important. That we have since gone on tours and have spent time together, and find that we can talk about many things, not just Bill Evans, and and share a lot of other common interests and perspectives about, there's so much going on in the world. So to be able to have conversations about what's going on, and feel like-mindedness about other things as well, that was definitely a good revelation for me.
So
Yeah,
let's get to, no, go ahead.
I was just say I agree. Yeah, it's a great thing to be able to work with someone who is, as Noah said, as very reliable and all that, and to feel like you are similar mindset. Because I think, well, as I suppose arguably happened with Stan Getz when he tried to work with Bill, if you've got the wrong personalities coming together, it just wouldn't work. Especially with this music, it's so specific, and so much behind it. Especially once you're getting into the what was going on in his life, you can't. You have to treat it with the respect it deserves. So I think Noah, being the person she is, that's why it works and why we work together.
So probably one of the reasons why I'm sitting here interviewing you is because of Bill Evans. Kind of Blue was my gateway drug. And Bill Evans, at a minimum, on that album operates as a gateway to a lot of people that have discovered and loved jazz. But there's such a wide breadth of his catalog. And the reason why I bring this up is, what was that seminal album for you, whether it was an album or it was a live jazz experience, that totally hooked you in and you wanted more, and it became the focal point of your life and turned into your career?
Are you
Can
talking
I
about
go?
Bill or jazz in
No,
general,
just in
or?
general, yeah. Just
Okay.
anybody in the beginning that totally swayed you.
I'll go first if it's
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
because it was Blue and Green. It was I think I was listening to some jazz, like I'd been given some tapes, cassettes, from a friend whose brother had some random stuff. But there's one very specific memory where I remember sitting with some friends, some teenagers, friends of mine, when I was 16 or whatever, and maybe a bit younger. My friend had this compilation disc, greatest albums, whatever, jazz thing, and on there was Blue and Green, and I remember just the opening chords that Bill played. I just remember kind of going, "What is this?" I think that probably was the moment, even though I was into it a bit, but that really, really, really hooked me. Just those, I don't know, 5 or 6 opening chords on
Yeah,
the piano. Yeah.
I totally get it. How about you?
Yeah. Um, so I grew up in a very small town. Well, I spent my high school in a small town, um, and I don't think a lot of people like were into jazz or anything like that. And I was in a youth group, trying to do musical theater and stuff like that. Um, and for the like end of year showcase, um, everybody got to sing one song. And I don't know, there was some sort of a girls thing and drama, and the one of the girls convinced the pianist to like not want to work with me. So I got to work with the musical director, who ended up telling me, have you ever heard of Sarah Vaughan? And I was like, no. He said, I think you did good on this, and he gave me Lullaby of Birdland from the album with Clifford, where she scats. And I had no idea. I didn't know it was a scat. I didn't know what was it. And I learned it all like as as she sang it, and and practiced it, and that was like my piece, and I loved it. I mean, first of all, I her singing is just out of world, just there's nothing like it. Um, the breadth of emotions, she's funny, she's like supremely musical. She delivers a lyric, there's everything with Sarah. But the thing that happened next was that when I was practicing, there was this jazz trio of like, older dudes, who heard me, and they couldn't believe that there's like this young girl who's like singing Sarah Vaughan here. So I ended up kind of jamming with them a little bit, and which later kind of shed a like, oh, there's jazz, there are people playing jazz, that it exists, it lives. And so basically that was my gateway to start doing this. Started gigging with them, and they showed me the ropes and introduced me to more stuff. So yeah, it was like life changing, both like, the music itself, but then also just like meeting the people who are playing it. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to get a copy, they want to pick it up, download it, stream it, any of the good business, where's the best place for them to go?
That's a good question. Probably Bandcamp. That's what we would like.
Okay.
It's on Bandcamp. That's the best way to get it. And then if you want to just stream it, because it's easier, then we'll be on all the streaming platforms as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent. Are you going to get together and do this live at some point?
100%.
When,
Yes.
when's that going to happen? How can people find out?
Both our websites.
Okay.
Our release show is going to be at Pizza Express in Soho in London.
Okay.
And then we've got a full set of dates in the UK, and then a couple of dates in quite a few dates in Europe after that, and then hopefully hitting the US, fall of 26 or maybe 27.
Okay. Excellent. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the minute out today. It was great to meet you. Best of luck on this release and the tour. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
And
Neon Jazz.